What are we going to see here in Rapid City, do you think, are we going to feel any effects soon? Or I feel like Rapid City, our biggest thing is we have higher gas prices. But that's about, I guess, all that I notice mainly, unless people that are moving in are seeing those higher interest rates on their mortgages.
They are seeing higher interest rates on mortgages. And of course, everyone in Rapid City, it seems, is excited about changes at Ellsworth Air Force Base that are going to bring in thousands of additional residents. That means more demand for housing. That means prices on housing are likely to be pushed up, and so too are interest rates on those houses. So I think it's going to be a little more expensive a year from now to buy a house and to finance it than it is today in Rapid City.
Yeah. Don, what do you think? I guess what's your major takeaway from today's inflation report?
Well, I think the consensus is that today's news is good news. Inflation is moving in the proper direction. It's still too high, and it suggests that probably the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates yet again. We're moving towards the point, I think, where interest rates will stabilize, and the economy itself is generally pretty healthy right now. So I think we'd have to say that all things considered, the Fed has done a pretty good job managing the economy.
Definitely, since just a year ago, we were hitting 9%. So I guess, what do you think? I know that after the last time they met, they didn't raise it, but there was talks of 2 more, and now I've seen talks of just 1 more because it did drop so much this month.
Well, the Federal Reserve has a goal of 2% inflation. They've had that goal for many years, and that's likely to remain what they're shooting for. We're still above that, and I think at this point the Fed is just moving very slowly to kind of fine-tune the economy. You don't want to raise rates too much, or we'll have a recession. So one day at a time, I think, is the watchword here. They're likely, not certain, to raise rates this next time up, and then it depends on what the results are in the economy, whether they'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I know that a big one for this time was used cars are finally kind of going down again, but then they say new cars are going up. So I feel like we're still not quite finding this balance of the supply chain still.
Right, and what we use as a measure of inflation is a so-called market basket. It's got 80,000 items in it. And so this month, one of those items is bananas, and they're up. The other item, which you mentioned, is used cars. They're down. So it's a balance. Some are up, some are down, and that's always going to be the case among those 80,000 items. But in the aggregate, we're moving slowly into in the right direction.
Yeah. So this is almost just a question of my own. So student loans are going to start coming back up for people, as well as higher interest rates. Do you see this being an issue for people, especially younger people who, I guess sometimes this could almost be like a slap in the face? Like, I have not paid a student loan because I've been out of college since COVID-19. And then those credit card interest rates are going up, and there's almost this battle of what will younger people do?
Particularly people who have borrowed money to finance their education. Those people have been victimized, in my opinion, by a system in which the government has made money available for borrowing almost in unlimited amounts. And colleges are not foolish. They see that students can't afford it, so they raise tuition. And the student gets trapped, more debt, and probably coming up at a higher rate, and without the kind of relief that they had been expecting. It's a real dilemma. There's not a good answer to it, and I'm sure some bipartisan solution will arise. People sympathize with the plight of students who've been forced to borrow to finance their education.
Yeah, especially with the potential of another interest rate hike, those credit card rates are most likely to go up as well. I guess, is that a potential issue that you think the feds are looking at? I know that that's the whole idea, is to bring people's money kind of back, but what happens if they bring it back too much?
The Fed is looking for an appropriate balance. And the economy is not so finely tuned that they can say with precision what that balance is. They have to do something, probably raise rates a little bit, again, one more time, see what happens. If it hurts the economy too much, it will hurt the economy to some degree. If it hurts it too much, they'll have to dial back what they're doing. But they've got to go one step at a time, and neither the Fed nor President Biden nor anybody in Congress really knows with precision what's going to happen to our economy.
Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about how, I guess, the United States interest rate and how it affects the economy, affects the global economy as well?
The dollar remains the main international currency. So everyone in the world depends to one extent or another on the strength of the dollar and on the cost of borrowing money using the dollar as a denomination. So if we raise interest rates in the United States, that has a ripple effect. It causes other interest rates in the United States, such as mortgage rates, to go up. It also causes rates in the UK and in Spain, and for that matter, oddly enough, in Russia. So they say when the United States sneezes, the world gets a cold, and that's probably going to be true for several more years.
Yeah, definitely, until we can kind of figure something out. At one point I saw the potential these COVID effects we're going to feel until pretty much the end of 2025, when everything will kind of be ironed out to what it was pre-COVID.
That's a reasonable estimate, but it's only an estimate. We don't really know.
Yeah.
We've never had a situation where the government has injected as much money into the economy, several $1 trillion, because of COVID over the last several years. We don't really know what the ultimate consequence of that will be. We do know it's having an inflationary effect right now, and we also know that that is beginning to abate.
Inflation is varying by city as well. Like New York was 2.7%, whereas Miami was still 7%. So I guess, what is kind of driving that variance in inflation?
For the most part, I think it's real estate. Real estate is a large component of the economy, whether you're in New York or Philadelphia or Miami or Rapid City. And the real estate market inherently is a local market. So prices in New York seem to be abating somewhat. Prices in Miami are still going like gangbusters. And that's likely to continue to be the case, that kind of differential from one city to another.
Yeah. One last question. I'm going to loop back to President Biden. I saw that some economists are saying the amount of money that President Biden pushed into the economy is kind of what pushed us into this massive inflation bubble that we saw last summer.
Well, that's true, and let's include President Trump in that as well. Both presidents have injected huge quantities of money into our economy. It's like medicine for a disease. It was necessary, probably, to keep our economy from tanking completely. But there's no free lunch, and the cost of maintaining our economy is that we've put too much money into the economy. It's nobody's fault exactly, but it does mean that inflation is now a problem.